And welcome back to Love Your Food. This week we have a really interesting recipe for you. This is Vietnamese style lemongrass pork. And this is very similar to what you would find in a Vietnamese restaurant, typically served with a kind of a cabbage salad or slaw over rice with a fried egg on top, which you can see in our presentation here. It's actually pretty simple. It takes some time to marinate, but we'll show you our ingredients. So we're starting, we've got these beautiful pork chops. So these are bone-out loin chops. We're going to be using some fish sauce and some soy sauce, some honey, some shallots, some garlic, black pepper, some grated ginger, some lemongrass, and molasses. And that last one's pretty important for that nice, rich, toasty, caramelized flavor that's going to come. And we're going to start by peeling our garlic. And we're just going to pop these whole. Now we're going to be putting the stick blender in here just to make everything more like a marinade. So things don't have to look pretty. You don't have to get them into a particular shape yet. You do want them to be small enough that your blender can handle it. Now we're using a stick blender, so we want things to be in smallish pieces so that the stick blender doesn't choke on them. But they don't have to be super tiny. As long as they're not full size at this point, it should be fine. If you're using a food processor or a really powerful stand-up blender, you probably don't need to do most of this at all. You can just toss it all in with the liquid, and that'll help. For the lemongrass, now we're just using the pretty tender white bits in the inside of the lemongrass. We don't really want much of the tough outside, so we're going to cut off the stems. We're going to cut off the sort of dry green parts of the tip, and we're going to cut off the roots. And then we're going to peel off the outside parts just a little bit to get to those nice tender insides. And if they bend a little bit and aren't super fibrous, that's pretty much all you really need. That'll do. And then we're going to cut these into, again, pretty small pieces for the lemongrass, because this is going to be the toughest thing for the blender, and you don't want to get this stuff stuck in the you don't want to get this stuff stuck in your blender blades. And then that's just going to go in with all the rest of our ingredients in there. And then the rest of our ingredients are going to go in the black peppercorns, the ginger. We're going to put our honey in. Actually, first we're going to add just a little bit of our soy sauce. And all of the amounts are going to be in the description below. And we do need certainly some liquid in there to make sure everything is blendable. And then on top of that, we're going to add our honey. And then the tricky bit is the molasses. Of course, it's always a little bit tricky to get molasses out of the container. As you can see, it was not an easy task. So we're just going to scrape that off of our measuring spoon and into our mixture as best we possibly can. Don't worry, it'll all get mixed together. It's a little bit of a pain to clean, though. And then we're going to add, the last thing we're going to add is our fish sauce. So we're going to add our fish sauce in there. And then get our blender ready. So it's now time to get this started. So if you're using a stick blender like we are, the tricky bit is really getting it started. So we're just going to really gently work our way down while blending. And it will sort of slowly make a path for itself down into the liquidy bit down at the bottom, which will make things a little bit easier. So just sort of work your way down, give it a little turn, a little press, shake things around a little bit, and you can see here things are starting to get blended already. And once you're down at that liquid part down at the bottom, all those veggies are going to start releasing some liquid. It's going to make things move a lot faster. And we basically want to blend it until it looks about like this. So you can see it's mostly liquid. There's some little stringy bits of that lemongrass in there, but it's all really, really small, quite smooth at this point. and there's no chunks of anything left. So the garlic and the lemongrass, all those bits of shallot, everything has basically been blended down. If you have a few basically whole peppercorns in there still, that's fine. Don't worry about that. It's pretty normal for that to happen. And we're just going to let that sit for a little while we get our pork ready. So we want to butterfly these. We want to flatten them out a little bit. So we're going to open them up, which is cutting them along the side here. And you just want to do that really, really carefully. And you don't want to cut all the way through. You want to leave a little spine of pork on one side so we can just open it up to make these into basically a cutlet. So there we go. We've got our pork cutlet all butterflied. And then from here, we're actually going to pound these out a little bit. So we're going to pop these into a Ziploc bag. You can do this with just plastic wrap as well. And close it up. Try and get as much air out as possible. So you can see here, we're just going to pop it in the bag. Zip it up. Now, if you don't have like a meat tenderizing hammer or something, or the specialized piece of equipment for this, you can just do what we're doing here and use a frying pan. We really like using the frying pan because it gives you a lot of surface area. It basically flattens the whole thing at once. You don't have to worry about getting into neighborhoods, little areas of it at a time, and it just does the whole thing all in one go. And we just want to pound that until it's a little bit flatter, a little bit thinner, really quick to cook this way, and will definitely give a lot more surface area for that marinade. So we're going to get a bowl out here. We're going to pop a little bit of the marinade down on the bottom of the bowl and put our cutlet on top. And then on top of that, a little bit more of the marinade. And then we're just going to stack them up in here. We're just going to make layers of the pork cutlets and the marinade together. We want to make sure they all have pretty good coverage. You can still see some of those little peppercorns in there that didn't get blended up, but everything else is pretty much smooth in there. So here we're just going to make sure everything gets a good coating of that. Give it a little massage to make sure everything has good contact with the marinade. And from here, we're just going to pop these into some Ziploc bags again. And we're just going to let that go overnight. They also freeze really well, so if you don't want to use them all right away, then put them into one dinner's worth of servings and pop it in the freezer, and it's good in there for a lot longer, of course. In the fridge, these are good for a couple of days before you should really cook them. But a little bit longer time, certainly overnight, will give more time for that marinade to really work its way into those pork cutlets and gives you a little more flavor as well. So we're just going to pop the rest of that marinade in there, make sure that everything is really well covered in there. And then we're just going to zip these up and off to the fridge they go. So try to get as much air out as you can. Again, this will give you more contact between the marinade and your meat. So as much air as you can possibly remove. If you want to vacuum seal these as well, you can, although we don't recommend for this kind of this cut of pork to use sous vide cooking. We're going to be doing these in the cast iron skillet. So let those sit overnight, and they are going to go off into the fridge. So the next day we're going to get our plate ready. Now we're going to get the other ingredients together first because that pork is going to cook really, really fast. So we're just going to put together a quick salad. So a little bit of soy sauce, a little bit of fish sauce, a little bit of sesame oil, some mirin, some cooking wine. This is very similar to the cabbecha salad that we did on the channel a little while ago. So we're just going to roughly chop that cabbage. We're going to use some of those nice spicy Mexican style pickles we did a little while ago, the escabeche. And then we're ready to use our to get our pork going. So we've got a pan really nice and hot in there. You've got to make sure that it's super nice and hot. And that is ready to go. Now we're going to take this pork. It doesn't need any more salt. There's already quite a lot of salt in there from the soy sauce and the fish sauce. So what we're going to do is just add a little sprinkle of pepper. This is going to add a little bit of flavor. It's also going to sort of help that Maillard reaction, give a little better sear on things as it cooks in the cast iron. Now you can see we've left a lot of that marinade on there. That's just fine. It might make your cast iron a little messy, but it is a lot of flavor, and it's not gritty or anything. It's quite delicious. So once it sort of releases on its own, it's got that good sear on one side. We're just going to flip that over. Well, at the same time, we're getting our fried egg ready as well. Traditionally, in a Vietnamese restaurant, you'll see them. They kind of have that nice crispy brown edge on them, so you want to make sure they're well cooked. And then once it cooks all the way through, that's it. It's done. So we're going to get our plate together. We've got some nice rice. We've got our cabbage salad with the spicy pickles in it, with that light soy dressing. And then we just place our pork down on the plate and cover that with the fried egg. And this is very much like you'd find at a Vietnamese restaurant. This is a pretty common dish in a lot of the restaurants that we've eaten at here in Toronto. We've definitely run into this dish a number of times. It's really, really delicious and actually quite simple, as I said. A little bit of timing at the end that you require, but if you manage to get it all to work out, it'll all hit the plate at exactly the same time, and it will be a hit, I promise. So if you like this recipe, please do like and subscribe. And if you have any recipes you'd like to see Chef Caleb try on the channel, please let us know in the comments below. And remember to love your food.